Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from lastcar.info, and welcome to Behind the Wall, the post-race show that comes on after the race, where unofficially, pending the results of post-race inspection, Shane Van Gisbergen has stormed to his fourth consecutive road course victory, getting back the one that got away from him last year in the battle with Chris Buescher. Buescher this time finishing in third after a late race battle with Christopher Bell, but Van Gisbergen very much dominating this race and pulling off the win at Watkins Glen International. So congratulations to him and the Trackhouse effort, fresh off a contract extension as well. So wonderful time there for the number 88 team. This was indeed the end, a bit of a calmer end, I would say, to what has been a pretty wild and unfortunately at some aspects tragic weekend on the racing circuit. We'll be talking about all that tonight and with the action from the other races this weekend. But we'll start off with the Cup Series race here in the meantime here. So Shane Van Gisbergen again, your race winner here in impressive fashion. A race that I think that, especially given what had preceded it on the track there on both Friday and Saturday, was probably anticipating maybe something a bit more wild or anything, given the unpredictability of especially Saturday's race for the Xfinity Series. But as we've seen so often with this Cup Series car, it tends to have the field a bit more strung out, passing at a premium. We certainly saw that be an issue last week at Iowa. I don't know how much of a factor it was this time around, but certainly with as few cautions as the race had, it definitely seemed to be more a matter of strategy and just having the right one at the end. And Van Gisbergen certainly did, winning by over 10 seconds there at the finish line there over Christopher Bell and Chris Buescher. William Byron in the fourth spot, Chase Briscoe in fifth are your top five finishers here. Ryan Blaney was your pole sitter today. He finished in the sixth spot, as they mentioned in the post-race programming here on Peacock, showing that Briscoe had just got around Blaney there at the very end of the race. Daniel Suarez in the seventh spot. Bubba Wallace in eighth. Tyler Reddick in ninth, and Ross Chastain rounding out the top 10 there after a very physical race for him. He was involved in a number of minor incidents there along the way there in the race. Looking at the back of the field, this is kind of another measure of what happened here in this particular race. Kyle Larson virtually unopposed for last place after an early brake issue sent him spinning off of turn one, had the brake pedal slowly go down. They had to replace a brake line and some fluid. Ultimately, a seal had failed, so they had to go through the issue twice. Cost him 16 laps in the garage area. He was taking the last spot from, I believe, Josh Bilicki in the opening laps. Came back out in the race, and no other attrition, really. Everybody finishing the race under power, including Larson at the finish. Pretty much locked up the last place spot at the same time. And the unofficial results do indicate, at least so far, that Larson was classified last in this race. Of course, the other big story from this weekend, that being Connor Zilisch and his injury in Victory Lane after the Xfinity race there. Very thankful that he was okay and able to come to the track with broken collarbone is certainly nothing to sneeze at either. Serious injury that's going to have to recover, but thankfully it was not much worse than it easily could have been for the slip that happened on Saturday there. But good to see him back at the track. 87 car withdrawn from the race. Red Bull sponsorship is apparently very particular about who else is going to be in the car. And, indeed, I was kind of thinking about that after this was announced here with Zilisch being swapped out of the car. You may think much further back to the time when Team Red Bull existed and fielding their two cars, and Brian Vickers had his, I believe one of his first medical leaves that he had at the time. They put Matthias Ekstrom in the car. Matthias Ekstrom was actually a touring car driver in the DTM series for Red Bull. So it seems like they're just as particular now with who they switch into these cars on a relief driver basis as they've ever been. And that was the case there too. Was going to be interested in, again, a much less important aspect of it here, just to see if the 87 was going to be listed as your last place finisher in this race. We have had a history of drivers that have qualified cars that were then withdrawn from the race being listed in the final running results here. However, the timing and scoring today just showed the 39 cars, and indeed the results that have been posted. I'm looking at the J-Ski page here. again, indicating just the 39 starters here. In the meantime, we'll see if that ultimately changes. Of course, that will affect on what driver I'm going to feature in the last car article tonight. As such, I haven't started the article yet at the moment. Again, maybe it'll be something, it'll be kind of a combination of the two to kind of address there. I know that our other staff writers, when we have DNSs that are much more common in the ARCA West series or the ARCA National series, kind of put that in a separate category. But we'll see how that plays out here as well. But again, very thankful, my goodness, after, again, skipping ahead here to the Xfinity race there. Connor Zilisch with a tremendous victory in Saturday's race. A shocking moment there, again, as he slipped out of the on the edge of the car there, but fell. But again, good to see him in good spirits. CT scans, came out well there. And certainly, good to see. We'll, again, everything else about when he's going to come back, if we're going to see him in a couple weeks at Daytona for the next Xfinity race, or whatever, the plans are going forward, that'll all be figured out, I'm sure, at a later time, but we'll find out there at the same time. So, again, we'll talk more about the Xfinity race here in a little bit. We'll kind of do some upkeep on the Cup race. Don't have too much more to really say about today's race, to be honest, given the way that it played out there. Again, Van Gisbergen leading 3 times for 38 laps, finished 8th in stage 1, had a fine showing out there again. And then, much like we saw back at Sears Point and some of these other road courses this year, just really making the most out of it. Other drivers here in the mix, AJ Allmendinger, I was kind of expecting him to get a top 10 here at this point. Maybe just not the right strategy there at the end, finishes in the 11th spot. Ryan Preece looked very aggressive out there after he had a good showing at Iowa last week, finishing in the 13th spot. Joey Logano in 14th, Austin Dillon in 15th. Let's see, I saw there was a video posted just before I came on here, apparently a bit of a conversation between Zane Smith and Carson Hocevar after the conclusion of the race. I'm not exactly sure what the deal was there at the same time. But again, driver aggression, certainly a big topic as well from this weekend's action, and we'll certainly get into that there at the same time. Kyle Busch looked like he had a great car at the beginning, qualified 5th, had a bizarre incident with Denny Hamlin coming off of turn 11. Incidentally, I still go with those old turn numbers there. I know that nowadays they kind of go 6 and 7 with those last couple corners. I think this came up in last year's show too. I'm still so used to having to be 10 and 11 back then and counting the corners in the boot, because indeed we see that at Sears Point. If you got the chute cutting short the carousel, you go from turn 4 straight to turn 7. There is no 5 and 6 unless you're going to go in that portion there. But again, either way, whatever your preferred numbering scheme is, if it's 6 and 7 or 10 and 11, regardless, the final corner on the track, one of the bizarre incidents in this particular race, the one between Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch. It was very surprised that both cars were able to continue the race under power not come down pit road. Another incident where it seemed like Chastain kind of rooted his nose in there. A couple cars bounced off each other, and we see how easily these toe links are bent. And indeed, Kyle Busch's radio seemed to indicate that they had some kind of a problem with the toe at that point. Didn't ultimately get the caution to fix it, so he really had to kind of hang on. So really a 22nd place finish maybe is not too all that bad, given the amount of damage that he had. Denny Hamlin, kind of the same situation there in 25th. But, kind of an unusual deal there for Denny Hamlin, for one, for a driver that's also struggled at the road courses, but also Kyle Busch that's just looking to just have a good run basically anywhere after what's been another kind of rough season there for him and the Richard Childress Racing Group there. But again, 22nd and 25th for those drivers involved in that incident there too. We saw Brad Keselowski lead a bit on strategy towards the end of the race. Unfortunately, a cut tire dropped him back to the 31st spot at the end. John Hunter Nemechek backed into the outside wall at turn 5 after a tangle there with Ty Gibbs. Looked like he kind of crossed the nose of Gibbs from what the onboard cameras seemed to show there. But regardless, some damage to the rear of his car. Luckily, did not damage the rear spoiler. The replays did show that the damage was somehow below where the spoiler was. 42 car ends up coming back in the 32nd spot. Unfortunately, still kind of a rough run for him. Looking through the rest of the bottom five here as well, Josh Berry had a rough go of it there. One of the few incidents well, even that incident didn't really bring out the caution. It was debris that may have come off his car that brought out the yellow. But Berry getting spun in a stack up of traffic off of turn 5, backed him into the outside guardrail, kept the car going, but finished the race, the last car on the lead lap in the 35th spot. So a rough deal there for the Las Vegas winner there too. And then further back, you got the last of the part-time open teams losing laps at the end of the race there. J.J. Yaley, Josh Bilicki, and Catherine Legg back and forth there. Legg actually got back on the lead lap after Keselowski's original pit stop. Van Gisbergen then caught and lapped her again, finishing in the 36th spot. She would have been in the lucky dog spot had we had a caution there at the end. Indeed, it looked like we were almost going to. With John Hunter Nemechek making a pretty daring save there, coming out of the S's and onto the back straightaway, but did a remarkable job saving it. The way they showed it at first, it looked like he bounced off the guardrail, but indeed he did not. So a fine job there for him at the same time. But regardless, again, a bit of a 32nd place finish, but could have been a worse situation, especially with no other drivers falling out of the race, much like we saw at Iowa. And again, kind of surprising given the very, very high attrition that we saw in especially the Xfinity race and the truck race this same weekend here too. Very much a tale of a couple of different races here. Kyle Larson kind of putting another pin in this here as well with the brake issue and losing the 16 laps in the garage area, did come back out on track. They immediately talked about trying to get the fastest lap bonus, kind of similar to what we saw at Darlington or with some other races here earlier this year where drivers have early bad luck that basically takes them out of contention. It was I believe a 73.4 second lap. He got it down to a 73.203 second lap on, it shows lap 11. I'm trying to think, it must have been his 11th lap rather than the 11th lap of the race, because he was, again, 16 laps down, and I believe he went to the garage about 5 laps into the race. So he was probably in the garage on lap 11. But regardless, it must have been his first run back out there, taking it. I believe Chastain was holding it at the time. I know it was Kyle Busch and Chastain kind of trading that fastest lap bonus, and then it kind of went back the other way there too. So, but yeah, wow, tremendous pace here. I'm just looking at the amount of time that the race took to complete. Just 2 hours, 10 minutes, and 39 seconds there, reminiscent of that win that Martin Truex had a few years ago in the old car. Margin of victory, 11.116 seconds. So very unusual. I don't know if we've even had a race at Watkins Glen where everybody finished under power. I need to check that while I have my stats page up here and kind of look at that at the same time. But if it has happened, it seems like it's something that's been very rare. I'm seeing comments about that in the chat here at the same time. Let's see here. Looking at the results here and tracking the race and the reason out. Kind of boil it down from here, and then we'll get into the Xfinity and the Truck Series action from this weekend as well, and also talk about the video posted this past week on Kenny Irwin Jr. and the second part that's coming up this Tuesday. For those of you interested in that, I'll be also discussing that a bit later here in the show. Indeed, looking at the results here, there has not been a race, Cup race at Watkins Glen, where the last place finisher finished the race under power. I don't see one where they were disqualified either. So it looks like in every case, the last place finisher actually fell out for one reason or another. Engine failures are certainly the most common, with crashes just behind there as well. So yes, so very much an unusual race in many respects there too. And again, very surprising given what we had seen up to this point here. So let's see. Yeah, no, that's really the case there. And the last place finish for the number 5. Single-digit numbers usually don't finish last in a Cup race at Watkins Glen. The number 87, if it had been credited with last place, was Zilisch. It has finished last there before with Ron Fellows back in the 2000 season, the Bully Hill Vineyards car. Indeed, that was actually the sponsor unofficially listed for Garrett Smithley in the Xfinity race, although it looked like that car had pretty much no sponsorship on it at all. Despite adding the lizard meme to the hood of the car there too. So kind of a different situation there at that end. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's about it on that end. Gotta say, I mean, this is, a tricky show a bit today. And I think just, combination of having a race with such low attrition here in the Cup race. And again, tremendous win for Van Gisbergen and very, very low attrition. But again, at the same time, a wild lead up to it here with Xfinity and trucks. I suppose we'll go ahead and just jump right into that with this at the same time here. Of course, I would be remiss if I would skip past the other bit of news from this weekend. And, of course, that is, the loss of driver Robbie Brewer in an accident at the Bowman Gray Stadium back on Saturday night. My condolences, of course, to the friends and family of that driver there. Harrowing replays there from that. We're not going to play that on the show, of course, here tonight. But information indicated something tragically familiar, similar to what happened to Dean Roper back in 2001 at the Springfield Mile in an ARCA race out there. Apparently reports of a heart attack or a medical emergency that was suffered by Brewer there before the car then struck the outside wall. And just an awful situation. So again, condolences to the friends, family, and fans there of Robbie Brewer. We got another reminder again of just how dangerous this sport can be, and also really what these drivers go through in the car. And even at a track as small as Bowman Gray Stadium, for as intense as the drivers compete out there, and indeed Brewer himself credited as being a very intense competitor out there as well for as long as he'd competed. It just shows that these drivers, they really do put their lives on the line, and it's not a small thing. It's an exceptional thing these drivers do, and what they put their bodies through and what they put their teams through and their equipment through. It is a pursuit of excellence that is about you're just really pushing limits. And the unfortunate reality is for as safe as we make these cars and as much as drivers try to really, perfect their bodies as much as they can to put up with those strains, sometimes these things do happen, and hopefully they're very rare when they do, but it's still very much a part of the sport. And I know that it's an awful situation, and certainly wishing the best again for everybody involved in that. So an unfortunate part of the stories from this past weekend here as well. We'll go into the Xfinity Series race here in a little bit. I'm going to step away in just a moment here, and then we'll cut into the Xfinity action in just a moment. So stay tuned, folks. Had it on mute. Apologies there. All right. So coming back here on the show, we'll talk about the Xfinity Series race. And I wanted to step aside there for a moment to kind of get the second screen set up here. I think we should be okay. because I do want to kind of analyze some of the replays. What we saw in the Xfinity race, and again, this well before what happened in Victory Lane here. We'll talk more about the racecraft of this here now in this phase of it. There's been a lot of criticism about the amount of runoff area at these tracks and how aggressively these drivers are using it. And indeed, we've seen this track evolve so much more. We're seeing a lot of replays from past incidents here where, yeah, there's been grass in those runoff areas. And, drivers kind of dissuaded from getting there because once they're going to put a couple wheels off, the grass just grabs them. They slide off into one of these unforgiving Armco barriers around this particular track. But we have the runoff, and then they have they put the divots in there, right? They kind of did something like that where it's not necessarily a smooth ride. Once you're kind of running off course there, you're still kind of disincentivized from being there. But we've still seen a lot of drivers just, not seem to particularly care and run that off. There's that picture that was taken from the Truck Series race that showed the entire front pack basically below the line at turn 1, not even using the surface of the track there, just showing how much that drivers are able to kind of work their way outside there at the same time. So, it's very reminiscent. It's not something that's entirely unique to Watkins Glen. Indeed, we've seen this at Sears Point. If you remember the exit of turn 4 going downhill into the chute, there's that runoff area coming outside of there, and the drivers have to kind of play a game of chicken before that wall kind of comes up to their left. And we have something very similar to that now at the exit of turn 5 at the carousel there in particular, where we saw a number of incidents this past weekend. And it's not an exact science. You got a couple drivers kind of chasing each other, looking to set somebody up. Is the driver that's on the right going to give the driver on the left a little bit more room? Or is the driver behind that's going to kind of has their nose in there, but not entirely clear, going to back off? This was a very big issue, from this weekend. And I don't exactly know what the best solution is. I don't see them putting grass back in there. I don't think something that encourages a really, I hope it's not something that results into something like a hyper focus on track limits like we've seen in Formula One. Indeed, they've, basically had to do that at Circuit of the Americas there, although I think shortening that course has kind of helped that issue quite a bit. I think made a much better race this year than we've seen in years past. But regardless, we saw some savage battles there at both ends of the field, towards the front of the field and also kind of further back in the lineup there through other drivers. So we'll kind of get into, I have the replay from the race here kind of brought up on the second screen. Let me get it kind of brought up here, and we'll kind of look at some of these at the same time. I have it muted here just for now, but let's see here. So first of all, we got the battle for the lead between Connor Zilisch and Shane Van Gisbergen. Of course, Zilisch in the white and red car on the left, and Van Gisbergen in the middle, and Austin Hill, who at the time had just caught up to the top two leaders. We are not done talking about Hill, not by a long shot here in this segment too. Of course, we'll be catching up on that in a moment. Now, of the many incidents that we saw in this one, I have a harder time being too critical of this one here. You had basically almost a 3-wide battle at this point. I think Hill was just a little bit further back of the 9 and the 88, but things were stacking up there. Zilisch, again, running off course here and trying to kind of get in front of Van Gisbergen, or maybe just try to get right behind him, just get in line and keep it going. And what we'd seen up to this point was a fantastic battle between the two of them. And hopefully once Zilisch is healed up there, we can see this back again. Indeed, on top of, Zilisch had the back injury at Talladega this year, and now this broken collarbone, and just a frightening situation there on Saturday. I mean, it really can't be oversaid on that. I'm just thankful that he's, as well as he is under the circumstances here. But again, most important thing is that, he feels better, he recovers, and once he's back, I anticipate we're going to have some great battles like this again. But no rush for him coming back. I think the most important thing is making sure that he's okay. But in this particular incident that happened much earlier in the race there, we had, again, coming back up on the track a little earlier. I mean, you have this runoff here, and it's running out because you got the grass coming up. Certainly no driver wants to get in that grass and spin out. He probably could have waited a moment later and filed in behind Van Gisbergen here, but came back up the track and just the contact here that sent the 9 around into the wall. I think there's a view from the side there that does it better justice, but this too, I mean, the amount of runoff that's in turn 11, if you haven't seen this track in person, there's a big elevation change in this corner, and you kind of get a better sense of it here with this runoff that's more or less flat, and the corner that's really has a bit of banking to it. It kind of kind of swirls around and goes back uphill a bit, back onto the front straightaway. It's a very, very tricky corner. I've always in my mind kind of pictured it as being just flat all the way across, but you can see already from this line here how different this section is from the track surface itself. And once you're on there, that wall comes up extremely quick. And good to see Van Gisbergen okay as well after a very savage hit to the outside wall there with the number 9 car here. We'll get to the other replay. Yeah, that's just not the best replay here. There's that one from the side that seemed to illustrate this pretty well. And we'll see if this comes up here too. Yeah, maybe not quite a 3-wide thing. Austin Hill's a bit further back there too. But again, trying to get back on track. And there's also been discussion about like what role the spotters have here. I don't know why this corner would be so tricky for spotters to see. I would assume that some would be on, because you got the grandstands back there, and a lot of these grandstands at the tracks, you got people, standing up back there or something. I don't know if it's the bridge, maybe. I would have loved a better explanation as to why this was an issue, because this came up again a bit today with the incident between Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin. So I don't know exactly what the story was there too. But again, again, a bit of a misjudgment there. Sent Van Gisbergen the wall, ended what was a thoroughly entertaining race between the top 2 drivers there. But again, just a mistake. It's certainly on Zilich's side there, coming into the corner there. The contact, sending the 9 around. I'm sure, especially these both being Jarrah Motorsports cars, I can't ascribe any intent to it. It's hard racing. And it's the kind of hard racing that, somebody was making comparisons. There you go. You can see the elevation change here too. Kind of to like an old Petty and Pearson kind of battle here. And maybe this is what we're seeing here. Certainly we saw glimpses of this at Sears Point back in the Xfinity race for how tight the two were battling there to the end. No, we don't have another replay there from that one, at least not in this package here too. Yeah, again, a tough deal there for both of them, but a bit of a back and forth at that point. We'll jump ahead to the Austin Hill incident. I definitely do want to get into that a bit more because I think that was probably, well, certainly in terms of outcome, the more flagrant incident, and certainly the way that it played out. Michael McDowell had a fantastic run out there. His first Xfinity start, indeed, since he won the Road America race back in 2016, which, interestingly, was the first and only Xfinity last place finish for Garrett Smithley. He was driving the number 0 car, if you remember that, for JD Motorsports. Had a wreck very early in the race. Smithley, interestingly enough, has not had a last place finish in the series since then, until this race just yesterday, when he had the number 14 car and lost an engine in the opening lap. So unfortunately, a short afternoon for the SS Greenlight team. Indeed, his teammate Preston Pardis also had some issues there as well. The number 07 going behind the wall for many laps and coming back out just before the biggest incident of the day. Going back to, let's see if we get it queued up to the right spot. Okay, yes. So, jumping ahead here on this, we do have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that, of course, is this big incident that happened at the exit of turn 5 or turn 9, depending on how you want to look at it there, too. This corner and this short straightaway has always been a real big problem. I mean, back when this was grass, you saw the replays of the scary crash that Sam Hornish had there. Jeff Gordon was involved in that. Michael McDowell himself knew of this corner in 2014. Probably one of the last times we've had a red flag in a Cup Series race there with his tangle there with Ryan Newman that ripped the rear housing out of the car when he was driving for the Levine family team. But coming through this corner here and seeing this runoff, so you got the line over here for the track surface. Everybody's, of course, sliding off here because they got so much speed. You're going downhill. You're coming out of a very fast corner. You got a straightaway ahead, and you're trying to set up for turn 10 or turn 6, depending on your preference there, trying to get up there. So at the same time, of course, the foreground, you got this guardrail that's coming up there, and the drivers are trying to file back in line. Now, Austin Hill, looked to me in this replay that he's pretty much out of control because he is so far out. He's almost up to wherever the grass is or the entrance to the boot here at this point. There's a little bit of a divider here between the two courses. Indeed, we saw Ross Chastain use that access road in the truck race. But Hill is absurdly far out. Now I'm sure he's thinking, oh boy, yeah, I'm gonna be able to make this pass, and Michael McDowell's gonna let him in or something like that. But McDowell, I mean, I don't even know if he knew Hill was there or if he thought, okay, well, he's going to have to back off because there's no way there's going to be enough room because both of them are pretty far off. Look, they're even further to the inside than where Sammy Smith and Sam Mayer and these other guys back there are. But Hill should have backed off. I mean, maybe easier said than done in the moment, but live to fight another day. You guys are this far ahead of Sammy Smith and the others. If you can breathe the gas, get right behind McDowell, maybe set him up for the next corner here. Again, 10 or 11, that probably would have been the best way to do it. But instead, sticks the nose in there, hooks McDowell right where this fence is coming up here, and then the rest is just a huge mess. I mean, this was catastrophic here. Thank goodness nobody was injured in this either, because this could have been, well, it already was big enough as it was. But McDowell gets turned, Hill escapes, McDowell bounces back into traffic, gets the outside wall, wheel comes off, bounces off the front of William Sawalich's car. You got Taylor Gray involved here. And then a second chain reaction further back. Ryan Ellis was very upfront in his on social media here about how quickly they came up on this accident and how he had that second chain reaction further back with other drivers involved. Kyle Sieg collected, getting in the back here of Josh Bilicki here as well, the 91. Some very hard hits. We saw a lot of damage to the windshield on the driver's side of Ellis's car. Thankfully, again, he was okay. Bilicki's car hopping off the rear wheels in this pileup. Kyle Sieg slamming the outside wall very hard here too, and also getting collected by his teammate and brother Ryan Sieg at the same time. Look at this. I mean, just absolutely absurd. You got all this ground back here. And again, they're both kind of a bit out of control, but again, you got to sort it out at some point. Could McDowell given him a bit more room? Yeah, probably. That probably would have helped here too. But again, one zigs, the other zags. At the very last minute, it just seems like, and he kind of comes up into McDowell before. He spins him before even getting to that wall, getting back on the track, and causes this huge wreck. And again, for this to happen right after the deal at Indianapolis, which was admittedly more flagrant, even though it involved fewer cars, Hill absolutely intentionally wrecked Eric Almirola at Indy. It was pretty clear from, the way his hands are moving. This was just absolutely reckless. And I think, especially given that he just come back from that suspension, I would say he would probably have been even more in his hands to back off there a little bit. But just a really, really unfortunate deal here. And as so often happens, the driver that causes it gets away. Everybody else stacks up into it. Just a big mess. You'll see the second part of the chain reaction here. Yep, there you go. Ellis looks like he got back at Bilicki there with the damage on the windscreen. Kyle Sieg very hard into that wall there. Rough day for the RSS team there again. Just a real big mess. I don't know what the solution is there with Austin Hill. Certainly the one race suspension wasn't enough. I don't know if we're going to get something like that this week here. But, I mean, there just needs to be a come to Jesus moment here at this point. They need to have something where somebody's going to step in there and just say, look, I'm not going to have you just wadding up half the field. 16 cars in this particular wreck here in one of these pileups. It's just it's not sustainable. And he's been the common denominator in a lot of these wrecks here too. And it's frustrating because he's a talented driver. He's a great super speedway driver. He doesn't have to do this on the super speedways. He can just get up there on raw speed. We've seen him start to branch out on other tracks and win there as well, winning at Pocono, for example. And yet, we have these kind of incidents, and I've mentioned it on here on the show before. NASCAR's had drivers like this, where a guy like Ernie Irvan or like Tony Stewart in his early years, where they're always the guy that's being involved in these incidents, and other drivers, more and more drivers are getting upset at it. We're hearing about Carson Hocevar now. certainly a situation like this, it needs to be looked at more closely. And I know that what we saw from Richard Childress's interview after Indianapolis, again, Childress trying not to get in any more trouble with NASCAR or something, in terms of what he was saying there at the time. Goodness, it's becoming a real big mess here. And this one was just so flagrant. Like, come on. I mean, it was not the last lap of the race. It was not for the lead or anything. It was getting towards the end, admittedly. But I mean, my goodness. I mean, there certainly seems to be, on the one hand, you could look at this and say, okay, here's two very aggressive drivers, but you got one of them that's coming back from suspension. You think that you'd want to avoid being in some kind of a situation like that again. But again, that hook there coming right off the corner is I mean, it was it could have been possibly one of the worst spots to do it there off that corner coming into that deal. So, I mean, again, coming out here, looks like he's pretty much straight, coming back up, and just getting right in the rear of the car there and just hooking him there. I mean, my goodness, just a complete mess. Now, again, kind of going back to what we saw earlier with the Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch thing, how much of this is the spotters issue? And okay, I mean, are there really no spotters in turn 5 that can't see this? Or, I mean, I know there's a spotter stand at the entry to turn 5 coming into that corner there. But at the exit, I mean, it certainly seems like there has to be one. It's not an unforeseeable thing because we have had serious wrecks here before. This one played out almost exactly the same way years later as all those other ones did. And it's narrow. I mean, I don't know if there's a way that you could widen the section there necessarily. I mean, if you could put the guardrails further away, I don't know if that would help either. Because again, these cars are going to skate and, run into them anyway. We saw, kind of similar situations entering the S's too. I mean, I don't think a safer barrier would change that necessarily. I don't know how much more of the impact that would absorb. I mean, certainly if it's something that's better for driver safety, that would be great. But in terms of preventing these pileups, I don't know how much good that would do because these Armco barriers seem like they just kind of deflect and, bounce these cars back on the track there too. So, it's really a rough deal. And this was a very ugly incident. And I know it's getting it's getting not as much coverage now, given everything that's happened, the last 24 hours here since the incident. But it's still outrageous. And, I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if it's, I don't know what it is, but, again, clearly I think somebody mentioned this on social media, the lesson was not learned. The one race suspension was not enough. I don't know if you do it for 2 races. I don't know if you, I mean, they've already taken away the playoff points and so forth. I don't know what the best solution is on this, but they got to do something. It's, I don't know. I'm kind of beside myself. I couldn't believe it when it happened. It could have been a very serious accident, especially for McDowell. I was amazed that he didn't get hit a second time when he came over and hit this other wall here. I thought for sure that he got clobbered by one of these guys coming through. A lot of drivers that came through this wreck, kind of at the same time, showed tremendous skill getting through it. You got Austin Green right here, Carson Kvapil behind him here getting through this. Christian Eckes too made a very simple move to the left there, getting around there. And then Kvapil in particular made a very quick one there, getting in front of looks like Sam Mayer here coming through this. But again, it's such a dangerous spot, and this track has always been the cage match of road courses, not just the super speedway of it, but just an all-out cage match. You got the high fences, you got those narrow runoff areas, the Armco barriers. Any kind of reckless driving like that, I mean, it needs to be scrutinized even more. And to sweep the 11 off your nose here, coming back on the track, it's like, oh, I got to get back on the track. Good luck, everyone. Turn hard to the right there and just scoop them. Just crazy, just a crazy situation. So I don't know. I don't know what gets done about that. Hopefully something does, but because that can't keep going. It can't keep going. So we'll see what the story is there at the same time. but ended up being a very costly wreck for several drivers through the field. We were already down to 30 cars at that point, about 32 cars at this point, with a lot of mechanical issues there in the early stages, mechanical issues and crashes, come to think of it, with Thomas Annunziata backing into the wall. We mentioned Smithley and the engine failure. Riley Herbst lost an engine. Sheldon Creed had his tangle with Parker Retzlaff. Played out a very similar way there too. I think, again, the fact that Retzlaff's incident happened there too, and even Connor Zilich's incident with Shane Van Gisbergen, does show that, yeah, there is a concern with, how far these drivers, run off course and get back on track. The best I can say, I don't know if there's, again, something can be done, in terms of disincentivizing the drivers from going out there. I think they just need to reevaluate where the spotters are staged. I keep hearing this excuse this whole weekend. It's like, oh, well, the spotters can't see there. Well, then put spotters there. If you can't see there, you got to put somebody there because you can see it on TV. Like, something has to get worked out there. That's what really I think is the most common sense thing. Because they're going to keep doing it. If you got these drivers can use any part of the racetrack to make these passes, and if it's, there's not grass there, and indeed we saw a lot of grass kicked up even in the Cup race today. They're going to use all that, that space as best they can to set up these moves, and even more so in the Cup Series where the passes are just so hard to accomplish out there. So that really needs to be looked at. So they need to do something with Austin Hill to, try to reel him in. I don't know if suspensions are going to do it or what. If he needs to do a public apology like Ernie Irvan did in 91, I don't know what the situation is. It's just getting absurd. It's just getting downright absurd. And these drivers, maybe that's for them to figure out, what's the solution on that. So, it's just really unfortunate. But yeah, reevaluate where the spotters are. They need to figure something out on that. It can't keep being an excuse like, oh, I didn't see that. It's like, well, then put somebody there. Not every team puts their spotters in the same spot. Even at Sears Point, they got all kinds of different spots up on the hill to figure out this part of the track or that part and so forth. But if there's blind spots, they got to work something out with it too. I think that's going to be so critical. So I'm repeating myself on that, but I think that's, really where things need to work out there too. Also, the other incident that, what the hell was this about? Let's go back to, where is it? I want to find it. And it's somewhere here. Or was it here? What was that incident with that rescue truck backing up on the track? Talk about a miscommunication between either the officiating and the safety crews or somebody. And again, this got blamed on spotters too. It just makes me wonder what these spotters are doing if this is the excuse every time. Like, but where was it? I know it showed up on the video replay here. But let's see. I think that was earlier. There's Herbst's. There's Annunziata's incident. I think it was after that. Yeah, there it is. So hang on. We get the second screen here. Yeah, so this one here. So you got equipment truck backing up on the straightaway. You got two cars catching up here. Now, admittedly, Daniel Dye here in this blue car is going entirely too fast. And on top of this is the other aspect of this that didn't get brought up. I think the reason this equipment truck here is this 99 car here, Matt DiBenedetto. It actually broken down and actually ended up falling out of the race around this point. And you got cars moving around him too. So you already get a narrowed spot of these cars trying to move around him here. Like the 99 is not even really moving at this point. And this truck's backing up. And you got cars coming up here. Like I know there's a lot of moving parts here. But, the I didn't see that thing is wearing awfully old on me. I don't know if it is with you guys. We had this with the Cody Ware incident at Chicago, and now we got this here. Is it going to take something serious to happen, to do that? I mean, God forbid, because, this could have been a very serious situation, not just for the guys in the truck, but for Daniel here too. I mean, these pickup trucks, you talk about, I saw a video just the other day about how much of a hazard these are for pedestrians because there's not a way to go over the front of the truck. You got to go, you end up, going under it. And then you get, an exposure to more serious injuries. And that's just for a pedestrian. But, same kind of a situation there. If you get one of these cars that's low slung here and runs in the back of one of these or something like that, yeah, it could be a very dangerous situation. And this I don't think was a small moment. This isn't just like, oh, isn't this a wacky moment? Let's just all laugh at it. It's like, no, this was crazy. Daniel shouldn't have been going through there that fast. That truck certainly shouldn't have been going backwards. I don't know why the hell he's doing that. If maybe trying to get to this access road and go back to the infield. I mean, go forward and get to, I mean, it's like if you're doing this on the freeway. I mean, think about it that way. These cars on the pace laps, that's how fast they're going. I mean, going a good bit faster trying to catch the tail end of the field. But you wouldn't be backing up on the freeway there if you missed your exit. You keep going, go to the next one, and you can turn around from there. That's what this looked like. I can't imagine a situation where that would have been acceptable. I mean, they've really, I mean, if nobody can see anything and everybody's just kind of doing whatever they feel like, and it's chaos, and the risks are too high. It sounds sensational to have to bring that up, but it's not a small moment at all. Not in the least. So yeah, Daniel Dye coming through the wreck there should have been going slower. His spotter should have been up there, and then at the same time, yeah, the pickup truck driver or whoever was coordinating the equipment there from the tower, yeah, they should have been much more on the ball about it. They usually talk on the radio about. Oh, hang on, we don't need a teleport view here. Let's bring back to the main screen here. Yeah, we don't need to have a situation there where where you have just unpredictabilities in the equation. Usually they'll say like, okay, they'll instruct the pace car and say, okay, so-and-so is the last car on track, and just wait for them to go by, and then they'll get back in line and so forth. Something needs to be worked out. So, again, it's a very tricky track. It's always had, these risks to it, but yeah, it doesn't need any help to make it more dangerous. At the same time. So hopefully they treated this seriously and not just, oh, this is a funny little moment we're going to put in a montage later. That therein that complacency is what causes, real problems to spring up there. So, hopefully this will be something that gets treated as seriously as it should. So again, Smithley, your last place finisher on that, Annunziata next to last, Riley Herbst, Sheldon Creed, Preston Pardis there, the bottom five. Again, I mentioned the deal there with Retzliff there, who himself had another, bit of bad luck there too, dropping to 22nd after being right near the top 10 on the final lap of the race there, dropping to the tail end of the field. His incident with Sheldon Creed played out very similar to the Michael McDowell, Austin Hill deal. Again, cars just kind of working their way off there. If the spotters can't see it, they need to work that out, and because the drivers are going to keep using that runoff area, even if it's just a tire off, even if it's just a little bit, if they can kind of just, size up another car that way, and maybe you got one zigging and one zagging, and that's going to be the situation. And maybe it happens too quick for the spotters. It'd be interesting to get a spotter perspective on this too. If this is happening so quick and, maybe it's clear when the car is coming towards you, but not so much when they're coming away from you. Again, that's where you got to kind of reevaluate where the spotters are standing. I remember doing the research for the JD book that they talked about how, fans used to bring in box trucks to have like better viewing spots there, and they were banning them that year. And then they were going to kind of, transition that to have better sight lines. And part of that might've been about spotters being able to see more of the track. And you got, of course, the trees that are around the speedway too. You got other obstructions in the way. It is a massive track. I didn't really fully appreciate that till actually visiting there. That's probably the biggest thing. I've always viewed it as very fast track, but if you notice, even from the broadcast today, a lot of times you're looking up along straightaway, and you don't get that sense about how long each of those parts are. 2.5 mile course. It's a massive, massive track.